Hey fellow kids, do you like video games? Do you want your video games to be hip and relevant? You want to play a game that was quite obviously designed by a group of several men in their 50s who all sat around a table, each with a pad of paper with the words cool things written as a title, followed by a list of stereotypically cool and in things that they think the kids will like? Well, I've got some good news for you. There are teams of mental health professionals standing by to help you with what is obviously a serious, debilitating problem. Or if you live in a country without socialised healthcare, then I guess you could just play Sunset Overdrive. I remember seeing a single trailer for this game in the lead up to its launch, and it was the most cringy thing I'd ever seen come from the games industry at the time. Thankfully, in the years since, my resistance to cringe has risen dramatically, I think in part due to this load of meat grub. It really did feel like a bunch of old farts spoke to one another about the things they think the youth of today liked and made a game based on that. Of course, by today I mean 10 years ago, but let's be blunt, it's not like it wasn't the same back then, because corporations appealed to the youth the same way a rational argument appeals to a Trump voter. I won't lie, I wasn't interested in the game at launch, and back then I didn't even have an Xbox because I was convinced that Sony was better, until I realised that all platforms are equally shit in their own special ways. Except mobile, of course. Mobile is clearly superior. Mobile gamers are the true gamers. This is footage I recorded while I was pooping. So, Sunset Overdrive takes place in Sunset City and is about a mutant outbreak caused by an energy drink named Overdrive. It was developed by Insomniac and Blind Squirrel Games and was published by Microsoft and was for a time an Xbox exclusive, as far as I know. I didn't fact check that, and you don't really care, do you? You play as some random pleb working as a janitor at the big launch event of the Overdrive energy drink, the event seeming to be some sort of live concert thing, which already strikes me as a desperate attempt to look cool and happening, but if I stopped to point out every time I thought the game was doing that, we'd be here until the very last black hole evaporated. Our character is doing their best impression of me back when I was at work, i.e. half-arsing it and thinking about their job being awful and unfulfilling with a face like they're longing for death when things go sideways and the event patrons start transforming into mutants. No joke, whilst trying to record that line I kept getting to the half-arsing it bit and going blah 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 because my brain stopped working, and I thought to myself, you know what, I could have just left that in because that was pretty much an example of me at work. Turns out Overdrive has a few kinks in the formula, and anyone who consumes it becomes one of these monsters completely devoid of their former selves and addicted to the energy drink to the extent where they will consume it until their bodies physically burst. Damn, with a couple of rewrites that'd be a really good horror story right there, but this isn't something we're really supposed to think about. It's supposed to serve as a means of introducing a monster that we can guiltlessly slaughter for the fun times. The main story of this game focuses on the character we created in the beginning becoming the hero of the city as they search for a way out, hounded by violent scavengers, angry mutants, and elite robotic security forces of Fizco, the company that's responsible for this entire mess. I would like to explain why Fizco as a corporate entity seems to have more power than the police and the military in this world, because the city we're in is under quarantine, but it's not one set up by the army or anything, it was set up by Fizco. They apparently have the resources to do this. But then again, an energy drink company seems to apparently be able to afford high-tech robots for their security needs, so what do I know about the industry? I'd like to explain why this is the case, but clearly we're not supposed to examine this like with the mutants in their nightmarish predicament. In fact, whilst there is a story going on, we're clearly not expected to engage with it on anything other than a surface level, because what we're really here for is the gameplay, and you know what? I am 100% fine with that. I'm a story whore, you know that. If you told me a compelling enough tale about a time you went for a sandwich, it'd get me in bed. But this game's plot really is not a deep exploration of characters trying to survive against impossible odds in a world controlled by an evil corporate entity, one that would rather let everyone die just to protect their bottom line, because, you know, that'd be a little bit too real. Instead, it serves as a means to contextualise our activities within the game. It isn't meant to be picked apart, and doing so would be a complete waste of time on par with learning how to fart the alphabet. Why are we going to this dog park? Because some student lost her robot dog here and it needs to get back to her, so she'll help us build a propeller or something. Why are we bouncing around this train yard? Because a survivalist is live streaming our mutant kills to his followers, and this is where he needs us to be to do it. Sure, why not? Why are we naked and jumping over lava? Because a dude needs medicine and we're taking it to him via our blood because he's into LARPing and will only allow himself to be cured with, I don't know, leeches or something. The reasons behind everything we do are often very silly and over the top, but then again they only serve to get us moving so we can engage with more of the gameplay, and I'm really glad this is the case because the gameplay is brilliant and any excuse to do more of it is welcome in my book. Sunset Overdrive was clearly designed with the express purpose of making the moment-to-moment gameplay as fast and engaging for the player as possible. From the very start, you're taught that your character can grind along any rail they can find, they can wall run indefinitely, they can use cars, awnings and potted plants to bounce their way into the air, and so long as you can vaguely aim whatever weapon you have towards an opponent, then the auto-locker will kick into gear and you can shoot them without having to stop. The game is based around movement. If you stand still in combat, it's a death sentence, as enemies are quite accurate and can deal quite a lot of damage to you very quickly. Even the standard OD, or overcharged drinkers, as the mutants are called, I actually used to think it was overdosed, that's what I thought OD stood for, but it does not, can take off big chunks of your health if you're not careful. You might have heard auto-lock on and been a bit disappointed, but I assure you this works towards what the game game is aiming for. You can't just hold down the fire button until everything dies. You do need to aim vaguely towards where the enemy is, as I said a minute ago, and only when one is roughly towards the centre of your screen will your character lock on and then you can blast them. It does still allow the player to mess up shooting, but this system lets you engage with the game's combat effectively without having to disengage with the movement, which is good because the shooting mechanics on their own are nothing special, with most of the guns feeling kind of underwhelming, though as they are one part of a larger whole, this is the rare occasion where it doesn't really bother me much. I've mentioned in previous reviews that sometimes games will fail to provide a good sense of feedback to the player, with weapons and attacks lacking any feeling of impact and thus being unable to provide any satisfaction of their own. If you'd removed the movement mechanics from Sunset Overdrive, then the fact that most of the guns have no weight to them would really bother me, but as the main focus even in combat is the movement, I find I don't really mind it because my attention is kind of elsewhere. You really only need to be focused enough in a fight to make sure that your gun is vaguely aiming towards the direction of a bad thing. The rest of your effort should be on which rail you'll leap to next, which car or potted plant would be the best to bounce from, and asking yourself is now a good time and place to do a ground pound. In general, the mobility in this game is great. It's easy enough to engage in initially, it's always clear exactly where you can go with your current mode of traversal, and I've got to give credit to the game's environmental design for effectively laying out its pathways whilst avoiding too many of them looking like they stick out too much. This is one of those games where whilst there is a fast travel option available, I ended up preferring not to use it because the developers did such a great job of just making getting around the place to be one of the most fun things about the game. What I also like is whilst the movement is quite lenient in that you can afford to be a little bit inaccurate when moving for the sake of keeping the flow up, it is still possible to fuck up, so you really start to enjoy yourself the longer you can keep yourself moving. You have a constant combo meter that fills up as you move around the place, chaining together your jumps and your grinds and your rolls and your shooting can all build the combo meter, which is satisfying enough on its own, but as you reach certain thresholds it activates passive buffs that can make you more dangerous in combat. There are plenty to choose from, but my personal selection was the power that causes you to launch fiery balls when you swing your melee weapon, one that causes bouncy pads to generate explosions when you bounce on them, and the one that supercharges your ground pound ability, causing you to generate devastating shockwaves upon impact. I liked that last one especially because once I charged up I could sustain it for ages, and all of this quickly cleared out crowds of enemies and was just generally a lot of fun to do, just jumping into the air, ground pounding, jumping at the last minute so I could ground pound again, bouncing off a car, ground pounding again. It was just brilliant. Lots of fun, genuinely loved it. These abilities are called amps, and you can get some for yourself and some for your weapons. I often forgot to add amps to my weapons, mostly because I didn't need to 95% of the time, but it's not as if they're not effective, and I was curious enough to try some out. I attached one to my pistol that had a chance to explode enemies on contact, because, well, who doesn't want to do that, am I right? I stuck one to my record shooting gun thing that electrified the poor saps that I hit with it, and I attached one to my grenade launcher that set fire to the enemies that were caught in the explosions. There are plenty more, these are just the ones that I remember most fondly. You can also pick up passive traits by completing challenges. Shoot enough of the OD and you can get a perk that makes them hurt you less and increases the damage you do to them, or just one that improves the gun you're using in general when you use a gun enough. I think it's a perfectly good system that rewards the player for playing the game, and I found it encouraged me to try other methods more often than not. Though whilst I like being rewarded for getting good with a weapon, I am less fond about the fact that weapons level up with use. Some guns start out in a truly pathetic state, like this robot energy rifle thing or the redundant firecracker launcher. Redundant because the big bomb launcher is something you get early on and is infinitely more effective. There is never a reason to use a less powerful grenade launcher in this game. I was encouraged to try out other weapons to see what else I could do, but it just taught me that some of these guns are just genuinely useless for most situations, like this ice launcher thing, because why freeze enemies when you could just blow them up or shoot them normally? There is never a situation in the game where the former is a preferred stratagem. A couple of the late game guns are alright, like the AK-47 looking thing and the little handheld shotgun. They're both pretty effective. It seems like most of the custom made weapons are the ones that are basically Netflix originals. You know, a couple are really good, but the rest ultimately suck. And here's where the game's own sense of style trips it up. The game has the energy of an over-the-top action film for sure, but one directed at what the top dogs thought the kids would enjoy, clearly without at any point actually consulting someone under the age of 40. Sometimes they get things right. It is cool and very fun that we can grind along rails and definitely bounce off of objects that send us 100 feet into the sky. It's awesome that we can wall run for as long as we wanted on the water for a bit and that we can survive falling from the highest height without a scratch, so I'll give them that. What I won't give them is almost everything else. I find it hard to effectively articulate what it is about the game that really gets on my nerves, you know, at least until a cutscene happens, then I figure it out. Our protagonist is rather annoying, so we'll start with her. You make your protagonist yourself, but their personality is that which the game assigns them. And the thing is, it's a rather obnoxious personality that, again, is the sort of thing that a CEO from a decade ago might think the kids are like these days. They don't really have a lot going on for them outside the fact that they drink, don't care about the rules, man, and communicate mostly in wisecracks and swear words. It honestly feels rather odd that there is swearing in this game. The bright, colourful environment, over-the-top action, and rather silly-feeling story just don't lend themselves to the repeated F-bombs. I know that I swear a lot as a person, but even I understand that swearing on its own isn't witty or cool and doesn't fit in everywhere. Swearing can fit into a lot of things, but there's sort of an art to including it in a piece of media that many creators seem to really struggle with. Let's make this clear now, swearing isn't cool or shocking on its own. You know, unless you're 5, or a Frankie Boyle fan. It might have been once, many, many years ago, before Sunset Overdrive was even a vague idea in the back of the mind of a game dev who just finished crying in the bathroom, but over the last 20 years it's become so commonplace for so many different medias that you really do need to do more than just say the word fuck and expect a person to laugh. Even then, that's not to say that someone just saying fuck can't be funny, but it would be the context surrounding that would be the thing that actually made it funny, not just the word on its own. Sunset Overdrive spends too much time dropping swears and none of them have any real impact and just sound so out of place in the kind of game that we're playing. Sure, the game is a third-person shooter with mutants ransacking an entire city, but the rest of the presentation is colourful and stylised in such a way that if you removed a few bits of blood and beer and all the swear words, you could easily market this game towards actual children. There is an option in the menu to censor swearing, though it ain't anything clever, it's just a loud censor noise which plays over the swear words, which is something that can also be funny. I actually really enjoy the scenes in Brooklyn Nine-Nine where characters swear, but the swear word is a real swear word, so they have to censor it with a bleep, and that bleep is very impactful because you don't expect to hear it.
Oh, I thought you were saying this needs a
Oh my god!
Yeah, that was my reaction.
But again, the cursing itself just doesn't fit into the game very well. In fact, all of the game's attempts to be adult just don't work because they're so utterly juvenile in how they've been implemented. Juvenile really is the word for the game, thinking about it. It's not young and hip, it's just childish. Earlier I remarked that with a couple of rewrites, this setting would easily fit into a horror game because it's pretty horrific when you think about it. These mutants were all people once. Some of them are so addicted to what is clearly a toxic substance that they will actually drink until they burst. Nearly everyone in the city is either dead or a mutant. Those who survive are in some cases utterly deluded. Some of them are just kids whose parents are gone or dead. One of them's an old dude whose lifelong career as chief of security for Fizco came to an end when they automated everything just so they could save a few bucks, which is a different level of horror, but it could still classify, I think. Imagine when your job can be done by a machine for cheaper and those skills that you spent your life developing and relying upon are now rendered useless in a world that doesn't care about what happens to you. Sorry, that was a bit dark. That's kind of my point though. This whole setting is kind of disturbing when you think about it, when you look past the more colourful exterior and the sillier characters who make up this world, but to be fair though, you could probably make anything silly sound dark with a little effort. A naive young lad who's easily misled and manipulated by those around him works a full-time job for less than minimum wage at an unsafe fast food joint for a man who would gladly sell, sack or gamble him away for a meagre reward. An orphan teenager lives in poverty with her only friend and is talked down to and beaten on by everyone in her transfer school as the student council, teachers and everyone else watches and actively encourages such behaviour, with even her only friend turning on her when she realises that doing so will get her a better life. There you go, there's 2 for you right now. Sunset Overdrive, I feel, could have worked a lot better if the script was revised and the swear words were either cut completely or just used better. I don't mind it when a character says fuck. I don't mind it when our character says fuck. I just want it to at least sound organic, even if you can't manage funny. Something that could help with that is delivery. See, every character in this game is less a character and more a caricature. A loose collection of traits that aren't really supposed to be examined beyond what we see on the surface. Doing a deep dive onto any character outside of the old dude maybe, who lost his job to robots, would be futile, and even for the old dude it feels kind of pointless because like I said, the game doesn't want you to focus on any of these themes. I guess you can't be mad at annoying or one-dimensional characters if they're meant to be this way because we're not really meant to think about them. I mean, you can be mad actually, it's quite easy. Let's start with this utter douchebag who makes the amps for you. The way he speaks is irritating as hell. Yeah, I know, glass houses. He always sounded too loud and he was always dressed like this. I mean, God, he's asking to be punched. Now for this nutter who wears at least 2 hats and his name is literally Two Hat Jack, he takes the crowning title of the only character Ronica remembered when writing the script, who sells us guns for Overdrive. Wait, why does he want Overdrive? That thing that turns people into monsters? Should I be worried? That's literally not explained and I cannot fathom why he actually wants this stuff when money in this game exists. Maybe it's just supposed to be a wacky character trait. That was the wacky noise for when a wacky character has just been discussed. I hope you enjoyed it. Then you have this old lady who sells you clothes and her whole thing is that she thinks you dress like shit and will insult you constantly until you buy something of hers, and even then she'll still probably insult you because she's a bitch. There's Nerd Bob Squarepants here who is meek, unpopular and crushing on a cute girl who is way out of his league. Yeah, I've been there, buddy. There's old survivalist bloke who likes things being killed and watching the things being killed. But of course, the most annoying faction is the LARPers who pretend to live in a realm of fantasy, whose ruler is genuinely sick and will not accept modern medicines, and that is why at one point we have to strip naked and get covered in leeches to drink our bloods and become saturated with the medicine that we drink. That's kind of why we go all loopy. I said that earlier in a video, didn't I? You know, honestly, I actually found this bit kind of amusing. I have to ask though, what does creative media have against live-action role-playing as a thing? Like, whenever it pops up, it seems its only purpose is there to make a group of people look nerdy and pathetic, or to just be laughed at in general. I guess this is what the cool kids like to laugh at? I don't know, I was never cool. Doesn't matter, I suppose. Each character we meet is meant to serve a single purpose, and they all certainly do that. Jack sells us guns, good. Hatman makes us amps, fine. Nerdboy gives us quests, and the rest, well, most of the rest give us quests as well. Even these cheerleader Mexican wrestler ladies just give us quests. That's a shame. I thought we could do more with them. They seem like an interesting faction. The quests themselves aren't that complicated. They're basically a repeat of the old go here and either press all the buttons to do a thing or commit genocide. God, there really is no in-between on this, is there? Which, I'll be honest, is fine in this game because I said before, just getting around is satisfying and I was always happy to do it more. The game made it engaging just to traverse the city, and even though most of the objectives are the same thing, they all allow you to utilise the movement mechanics as often as possible, even in the tower defence missions, so it doesn't matter that the quests aren't much to write home about for the most part. I suppose that whole quest thing isn't really a complaint. What is a complaint though is how the costumes are in some cases so poorly made that if you're wearing a jacket that's just slightly too thick on your outer coat layer that sometimes your arms will just clip through it ridiculously in cutscenes. More customization would be nice in general. A lot of the clothes just really aren't that interesting, and their alternate colour palettes that you can swap between are just kinda meh. I could also do without the self-awareness, not just in my real life but in the game as well. The game likes to reference the fact that it's a video game a lot, and like with the rest of the writing, there's no real wit or thought about it, it just does it and thinks that that's comedy on its own. I really hate being critical of comedy because, as we all know, it's a very subjective thing. I might laugh at, say, this scene from The Owl House, and I do laugh at it. I think it's very charming and funny.
Willow, watch out! I got it. Lucky shot, Willow.
Hey, don't listen to her. You totally got me.
And you might not. You might laugh at, say, The Cleveland Show, and I definitely wouldn't. Neither of us are wrong for finding the things that we find funny to be funny, we just have different tastes in comedy, and that's absolutely fine. Comedy is rarely a one-size-fits-all. I genuinely laugh whilst watching the show Bluey, which is an adorable and fantastic show about a cartoon dog, but I also genuinely laugh at comedians like Jimmy Carr, and these two things are pretty much on opposite ends of the spectrum. I highly doubt that Bluey is going to go up to Bongo in the next episode and call her a cunt, although they are Australian, so that's actually a higher probability than I'd like to admit. I'm sure Sunset Overdrive has people who find it funny, and I don't just mean the blokes in suits who envisioned it. I mean, I bet there are actual gamers out here who find this particular brand of comedy to be right up their alley, and they're not wrong for liking it, just as I'm not wrong for disliking it. In my opinion, Sunset Overdrive just isn't funny. I can count 2 times I laughed throughout the entire game. The first was when the water treatment plant started giving the player sass, and the second time was right at the end when our character dies and the credits roll starting with a list of terminated stuff, only it's a fake out. That was quite funny, because terminating large quantities of staff is something that the industry does a lot for no reason. Well, the reason is money, but... I also don't really care for the soundtrack. It's got some very generic rock-sounding music playing whenever you do your things, and again, it just feels like an old dude said, "Hey, kids these days, they like this, right? They like this music," and threw it in. Anyway, I need to start wrapping things up, dude. This is already getting too long. The only significant thing I haven't discussed is the online mode, because there was not a single atom of my being that gives any sort of shit about that, so I'll make it quick. You can play online with some people. That's all I know, and that's all I care to know. In truth, online multiplayer as a concept is something that I like way more in theory than in practice. You know, unless I'm getting my ass kicked while playing Dark Souls, and I'm very happy that multiplayer exists. My focus is mainly on the single player experience, but that's simply because that anything has the potential to be more enjoyable when you do it with others, so people saying it gets better with friends don't seem to realise that it doesn't really speak to the quality of the experience itself. Or maybe I just hate people and prefer not to deal with them. Either way, my point is that multiplayer is not something that I care too much to focus on, and I don't think it's valid to say it gets better with people. People told me that about Borderlands, and that was an outright fucking lie, and I don't believe wandering around a bland wasteland that is Generation Zero would be an experience saved by doing it with other plebs. Sunset Overdrive might be a rather obnoxious game, but ultimately it was a lot of fun, and I was often looking forward to my next session. Its core gameplay is well conceived and perfectly fun. It's on Game Pass right now, so I'd say give it a go, it's worth playing. It's not a game for you if you need a complex narrative to enjoy a game, or if you prefer deeper dives into characters. However, if you just want something silly and fun that prioritises its moment-to-moment gameplay flow, then Sunset Overdrive is well worth checking out. And that will do. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and if you did, please consider liking and subscribing. Also, share it with your friends if you like, that would be very much appreciated. Also, I have to remind you, I have a T-Bill shop and a Patreon where you can support the channel if you'd like. It would really help, and see the links in the description if you wish to do so. So, thank you for being here again. Next time, I'm about 70% sure we're going to be talking about Bioshock Infinite and its DLCs, because I thought that would be fun. I'll be honest, Atomic Heart made me want to go back and play it, so I did. At least something good came out of me playing Atomic Heart. Here's hoping that all works out well. Take it easy, everyone. I love you all, and we will see you next time. Instead, it serves as a means. So much in this sentence, I hate it. You might have heard auto lock on and been a bit disappointed, but I assure you it works for... Works for a fart, apparently. I've mentioned in previous reviews that games sometimes fail to As to the special hero ramps to yourself... Oh, this is amplifiers. Yeah. As to the special hero ramps for yourself, you have ones that make your combat more flashy, but there are some that provide you... Oh, Jesus Christ. I don't mind a character saying fuck. I don't mind our character saying fuck. I just want it to sound... I wrote the word tit there instead of it. Fuck it. I just want it to sound sound organic. Fuck's sake. Oh, I'm not going to be able to put that in the main thing, am I?